Hey, sports fans, it's your favorite program, Socialing the Distance. Today we have Jodie Williams from the UK. You're in Tucson or Phoenix? Where did you say you were right now?
Phoenix, Phoenix,
She's in
Arizona. Yeah.
Phoenix, and she's a Puma sponsored athlete. You may have seen her competing for the UK over the last dozen years or so. I was totally impressed with you at the European Indoors. It's totally cool, and so we're going to talk a little bit about that. But Jodie, great to see you.
Great to see you too. Thank you so much for having me on.
No problem. So we were chatting just before how the pandemic has kind of changed everybody's lives. And you got caught over here during the pandemic early on in 2020, then went back to the UK and got caught there for a while. And tell us a little bit about that experience.
Yeah, so I've been based in Phoenix since probably the end of 2015. I was kind of in and out 2016 and then really moved out here in 2017. So I've been based out of Phoenix for a while. So when the pandemic hit, I was out here and everything kind of just happened really quickly. I think it'll be a similar story for most athletes. I was at the gym and our coach called us over and said, the track has been shut down. And it looks like the gym will be shut within the next week. And that was pretty much it. We didn't have any facilities to train at. So for a little while, we were going to our local park, but there's only so much you can really do. Then competitions, obviously at this point, it was March of an Olympic year. So we were very much gearing up to compete. And I was actually injured at the time. So the timing has actually worked out quite well for me. I was pretty badly hurt. So I wasn't sure if I was actually going to make it in time. It was going to be a bit of a squeeze. Everything shut down, competitions started getting cancelled. And then I went on Twitter one day and the Olympics had been postponed. That was really as much information as we had found out. We were pretty much told with the rest of the population. So yeah, I found out on Twitter the Olympics had been postponed, possibly cancelled. And that was it really. Now I was just in Phoenix, away from my family and my friends at home. Obviously I have a support base out here, but I was pretty much just out here on my own. Most people kind of moved back home, or I think a lot of people went back to their family homes for a bit of stability. We didn't know income-wise what was going to happen. Obviously, with things being cancelled, the season is how a lot of athletes make their money. We didn't know what was going to happen with contracts, and it's quite a scary place to be when you don't know if your income is going to be affected. I'm in a foreign country, got bills to pay. Yeah, like I said, I don't have a support system. So I have the main reason I'm out here is I love Phoenix and it is somewhere that I could see myself basing. But the main reason I was out here is because of training, obviously, and that kind of got taken away. So I really just suddenly it went from being Olympic year to I have nothing to do, no real purpose. So I had stayed in Phoenix for a little while. Then my boyfriend is based out in LA. So I went to stay with him for a little while and his family. And then it just kind of got to the point where I was just like, I'm going to have to make a decision here. And I did end up going back home just because things were so uncertain. So I moved back in with my mother, which I haven't been back into my family home since I moved out when I was 18. So that was quite an experience in itself.
Yeah.
Linked up with Brian Freckleton, who was my coach before I left the UK, and we're always in constant contact. He's really good friends with Stu as well, and they're always in contact. So yeah, we pretty much decided, it looks like I'm going to be here for a while. The US had a ban on pretty much all international travel, but the UK was on that banned list, so I couldn't get back in. Packed up my whole life. Everything I owned is in storage. I don't have anything in the UK at all. And that went from preparing to the Olympics to putting everything I own in storage and moving back into my mother's house. So it happened really quickly. So it was all just a bit of a blur. And then obviously facilities in the UK were kind of in and out. We went back into a really severe lockdown, as most of Europe did. We were getting hit by a second wave. So yeah, training was kind of hit and miss for everyone. I didn't have any 2020 season at all. We just decided to push through. But it was low-key a blessing in disguise for me, honestly. It gave me a different perspective on things. It forced me to take up a bunch of stuff that I hadn't really had an opportunity to take up before. Coffee conversations and just a bunch of stuff that I had kind of always thought about, but track had always come first. So yeah, it was a blessing in disguise. It was a crazy experience and definitely uprooted my whole life, as it did with most people. But there were definitely some blessings in there.
Well, many of us would know you as a 100-meter, 200-meter runner, and you, as a young athlete, those are some of the events that you did. And I seem to recall somewhere in an Athletics Weekly copy that you said that while you would do the 4x4 relay, you weren't really fascinated with the 400 flat. And then we started seeing you. Then I saw you on the list for European indoors. And Stuart Weir, who is my European guy, and are following you, and we're going, wow, you're not making any bad moves. So how did the getting into the 400 come about?
So yeah, as you said, the 100 and 200 was really my main focus when I was younger. I kind of stopped doing the 100 when I was around probably since I moved to the US. I kind of realized like my body didn't handle speed or intensity very well at all. So I've always trained a little more on the 400 side anyway. That's always been where my talent has lied. Anyone from the UK will also tell you that is basically our methodology. We train really long during the winter just because there's really no opportunity to get any speed work done. It's cold and rainy and you can only really do longer stuff. So I've always trained that way, and I've always been interested in the 4x4, but never really been interested in running the 400 flat. It's a miserable event. And although I've always trained that way, I used to do a couple of races early season as training, and I would run okay. I'd run like a 53 low, or maybe I think one time, I think in 2014, I ran 52.5 right at the end of the season. So that year I was kind of like, maybe if I gave it a chance, I would run fast, but there were never any real signs that was going to be something that I could really do. And at the time, the 200 was going really well. I was winning medals, and I really didn't see any reason to switch events. And then, had my injury struggles, as everyone knows, and I had a few just really mental battles through the sport, and I just kind of fell out of love with it. And at that point, I switched my training up again, mainly due to injury things. I couldn't really get a lot of speed work done. And I was just getting fitter and fitter and fitter, and I'd got faster as I'd got older as well. And it just started lending itself to 400 training. So I figured I would try a couple, and like the pandemic hit, and I was like, let me try 400s indoors. Obviously, I was part of the 4x4 relay in Doha as well, and split 49. So the signs were kind of there that this might be something that I could really challenge at. And, I've been struggling to have a breakthrough over the 200 for a little while. And it's still my event, and an event I absolutely love. But there's got to be a time when you need to look at your circumstances realistically and where you're going to win medals. And I'm still kind of at that point now. I've obviously taken the 400 a lot more seriously this season, and I've been doing both. And I've got targets in both of them, and I've got to deal with myself on a time that I need to run if I'm going to take the 200 seriously. But the 400 just kind of happened. It was a pretty natural journey for me.
What do you like about the 4x4?
I love it. So for me, that's how I've trained. I pretty much trained with boys my whole life. especially back in the UK. So I'm very used to chasing people. That was kind of how we would do our longer runs. It would just be me tagging on the back of the boys. That's how I've always trained. You know, they would take me to completely new limits and new heights. And the 4x4 is really similar. Obviously, you just kind of hope, well, I mean, unless you're at the very beginning or you're in the lead and you're trying to fight people off, most of the time you just sit behind someone and you sit on them. And I love chasing people down. I like the rhythm of it. And it's just something I'm kind of used to. It's fun as well, the 4x4. I've always enjoyed it. It's very similar to running 4s indoors, obviously with everyone merging into one lane. So I really enjoy 4s indoors as well, once I got the hang of it. But I just like that. I like being in the midst of it. It's very different, obviously, for a sprinter. Obviously, we're normally in lanes. It's nice to actually be in the midst of it and actually like battling it out with other people. I love that.
Talk to me about the Doha experience where you cranked that 49 split. Did you know you were flying?
Yeah, for sure. I think the 4x4 has always kind of been where my strengths have lied. Like I said, I used to run a couple of 4 flats, but I never really ran anything special. But I could always split 50 point regardless. So I kind of knew, you know, if I actually give this a real go, I can definitely split 49. I'm really, really good at just tagging behind someone and holding on to them. And I knew, obviously, these girls are the best of the best, and someone's going to split 49 or 48. And if I can just hang on with them, I'll go there too. And that's pretty much what happened. I was also on leg 2. So I had no choice but to go out really hard. Usually a 200 meter runner is on leg 2 because they're speed based and you need to kind of make that break. So it forced me to go out really hard and battle to get that break. And then I just stuck with, I think it was Sydney in the final. I just hung on to her as I could. And I think she ended up splitting 48. And then I split 49, 5 or 6 or something like that. So yeah, I kind of always knew I could do it. And I actually think I can split 48 now that I've been doing more 400s. It'll be interesting to see how that changes.
All right, I'm going to ask you a crazy question. Will we ever see you do an 800?
Do you know what? I actually have conversations. We have conversations like this in training all the time. Because on social media and things, I've always had people telling me like the 400 meters is your event, and people are always super invested in it. So me and my coach actually used to make a joke out of it, like, oh, you may as well just run 800. People are just going to keep pushing you up and up.
Yeah.
I think I could run a decent 8. I think I could run me and my coach have differing views on this, but I think I could run like a 210.
Okay, that's cool. That's respectable.
Yeah, respectable.
I love to ask Allison Felix that question because I get really dirty looks from her, and I've been asking since she was 18. I also do the one about the 400 hurdles because would you ever do the 400 hurdles?
This is another one I've actually had a discussion. I would love to try 400 hurdles. I'm a very rhythm-based runner.
Sure.
And I actually think my rhythm would really suit for hurdles. I just, I can't hurdle to save my life. I would love to give it a go.
That's kind of
at some point. Yeah, like maybe at the end of my career, I'll just jump in a 400 hurdles race.
You were talking about that kind of learning curve on the indoor 400. Most of your tracks, well, I think all the tracks in the UK are 200 meter. When I was running indoors, we were running on 160 yard. So think about running 22 laps for a 3,000. Wasn't fun, but the 2 laps for the 400. What was that like the first couple times? What did that feel like?
Yeah, the first time was rough for sure. I kind of thought because of my speed, and obviously the 4 indoors is all about making it to that break. And the break is huge. So I kind of felt like because I was obviously going to be the fastest raw speed person on the track, I would be good at 4s indoors, but it's very different and I really have no experience of running indoors at all. If I ever ran indoors, it was always 60s. I've never run 2s indoors. So For me, I really struggled with the banking. It doesn't really suit people with, I have a very long open stride, and it just kind of got really choppy for me going up and down the banks. And I really struggled with that. It takes me a lot of effort to run that way. So yeah, it was a different experience. And once I figured it out and where to push and where to kind of coast and open up my stride, it got a lot easier. But yeah, the first couple of times were, they were messy, to say the least.
When you were in tow room, one of the things that Stuart and I noted was you didn't make any mistakes in the heats. Running indoors, I try to describe as like roller derby, and it's in professional wrestling because it's pretty physical. How did you stay on your feet? Did you have any problems with that, with the physicality of the race, and especially at the break?
No, I really enjoyed it. Actually, I'm very competitive, and like I said, that's what I love about the 4x4. That's kind of the experience that I drew on was from the 4x4. I love the physicality of that. That really suits me quite nicely. I love the fight to the break, and I actually really enjoyed all of that. Again, I'm fortunate that I bring in raw speed, so for me to change gear was pretty easy. So I could kind of out sprint most people to the break without really getting involved in that mess. The mess was more behind me. I knew I could go through in sub 24 for that first, and not a lot of girls do that indoors. So yeah, I really enjoyed it. It was definitely an experience for sure. I think in the final I made a mistake where I kind of got stuck behind some people. And you know, the race was just happening at me. There was just so much going on. So I got stuck behind people coming around the top bend, and couldn't really find a clean path. But apart from that, yeah, I really enjoyed it. It's fun battling it out.
Yeah, it looked like in the final, in that final 50, you kept your head. I was trying to just see, well, who else can she take out? And you, in that chaos in that last 20 or 30, you seem to be able to keep your presence. And I think that's really key, you know. What is different about doing the 4x4 indoors? Is there is that more challenging as well?
Yeah, the 4x4 indoors was a completely new experience to me. It was really different. It's very hard to pace, I think, because obviously you're running in lane one the whole way. I found that really difficult pacing wise, because you've already broken. I think a lot of the pacing on 4 indoors, I base off of that first 200 and making it to the break. So without that, I kind of found I didn't know how hard to go out for the first lap. I didn't want to go out too fast and then really struggle coming home. And also so chaotic, like so chaotic. So yeah, that was an experience. I definitely prefer 4x4s outdoors.
Yeah.
But again, it was a learning curve for me.
Yeah, we had a series of pictures of people actually falling down and watching everybody get around, and it was fascinating. Mm-hmm. You mentioned just earlier, and I was lucky enough to watch one of your programs. You do your own programming, Coffee Conversation. Talk to me about that. Tell me how that started and what your goals are with that.
Yeah, for sure. So it's an idea I've had for a long time. Women and girls' rights are something that I'm personally very passionate about, and that's kind of what I want to get into post-sport. Like I mentioned, the pandemic kind of just gave me a new shift in focus. I had a lot of downtime. There was time when I wasn't really training. So I decided to start studying a little bit on women's and girls' rights. I knew it was something I was passionate about, and it's something I wanted to start speaking on, but I wanted to make sure that I was really educated on it before I started speaking on topics. I didn't want to just offer an opinion. I wanted, facts to back my opinions up on. I then also got involved with a charity that I work with called FemLead. So it's 5 women. We're based in Uganda, and we work within girls' education. And that just really opened up my eyes to a whole new world of issues and within girls' and women's rights that I'd never really had an experience in before. So that, again, just number one, gave me an education, and number two, kind of gave me a real fire in my belly to speak up on these issues, because they just were not being spoken about enough. Even for me, as someone who is very invested in it, I didn't even know that a lot of these things were going on. So I just kind of felt like I have a platform and I have a place where I can speak on these things, and I'd like to start utilizing that more. I'd like to be more than just this athlete that goes through the regular process of being athlete. I'd like to do some more. So that's kind of where Coffee Shop Conversations was birthed. I wanted to give a place where women could speak freely and openly about really whatever they wanted to. I tend to search for women who are doing really interesting things within their fields, or who are very educated within their fields. I just wanted to really give them a platform to speak openly about things, and freely, and maybe from a perspective that they haven't spoken on it from before. And yeah, it's been fascinating. Number one, for me personally, to be on the other side of interviewing. And number one, realizing how hard it is, and just, giving other people the opportunity to speak instead of me being the one asked questions. That was a really interesting experience for me. And just to be able to speak to these incredible women doing amazing things. I've had some really insightful conversations, and I've really been enjoying it. And being able to just bring to light things that aren't being spoken about, and maybe with my following, have a very male-dominated following. And I think it's really important for these women's issues to be brought to light to a male audience. I think that's super important as well. So, it's been a really interesting experience, and I'm still learning and growing with it, and hope to turn it into something that I definitely continue post-track. It's been really interesting. I've really enjoyed it.
Last week, the one that I saw, you did a very thoughtful job with what is euphemistically called female circumcision, and what many people call female mutilation. And there's very strong beliefs on each side. What type of response did you get from your conversation? How has the response been?
Generally people are just interested in hearing this conversation. Obviously, like you said, there's strong opinions on both sides, and I never want to be someone who is dictating either way. I think that's what's important to me, is opening the conversation with someone who is educated on that topic, and is just bringing to light an issue that is really important within women's rights, especially. Generally, I've had a very positive reaction of people just being like, this is not something that I had personally known about previously. Period poverty as well is something that I'm really invested in, and is something that we work with within Femly, the organization I was talking about earlier in Uganda, is a huge issue worldwide, and something that just isn't spoken about enough, especially in the Western world. For me, that was just a really important issue to be brought to light. It's kind of the area that, again, I have personal experience working within as well. I think it's important for me to bring to light topics that I have personal experience within, and kind of know a little, have background knowledge on, so that I'm not just speaking out of turn. Generally I've had a positive response.
All right, I'm going to make you the head of World Athletics TV for 24 hours. And your job is to help a male-dominated audience, which you said so deftly. How do you, if you were in charge of World Athletics TV for a day, how would you change the promotion or the coverage of athletics to showcase women's talents?
I think for me, telling a backstory is really important. I think a huge issue within women's sports is our visibility. And I will say, obviously, track is a sport which women and men are showcased on the same platform. Obviously, there's men and women at the same time competing. So it makes things a little easier. For the marketing team, we're both there at the same time, right? I think for women's sport, visibility is so huge, and telling women's backstories so that people are invested. I think that's what people want, to be invested in a journey and a story. And I think if you're not showcasing women on the same level as you are men, people are not invested. They see a lineup and they don't know any of the women in the race. They're not invested in anyone's journeys. And I also think a huge issue within women's sport is that the women that are showcased aren't necessarily always the most successful women. And this is no judgment on their part at all, because everyone deserves to be showcased for every reason. But I just feel like a lot of broadcasters will pick very specific women because of they fit a very certain aesthetic. Or, they look the part, and it's not always the most successful athletes. And I think we need to do a better job of showcasing these really successful athletes that may not necessarily be, aesthetically what the people say that people want to see. I just think we need to showcase the most successful women at the top of their sport and showcase them in that light. I think it's really important for young girls to see women performing and being successful in a sporting environment and a sporting light, and also for men to see that women can compete at a very high level of sport as well, and can be absolute bosses at what they're doing as well, and there is no lesser than. So yeah, I think that's what I would do, is showcase a backstory and make sure that I was showcasing a diverse range of different women, not just women that fit a very specific aesthetic.
When I was still doing print magazines in the late 1990s, I featured Pam, who was a two-time Olympian in the shot put. I put her on the cover, and I started getting letters from high school girls who said, they never thought they would see a shot putter on the cover of a magazine. And it was about beauty, and it was about the way culturally we do things. And I called Otto Bolden to task last week, waiting for the response. And I've known Allison Felix since she was, 15 years old. But there's other young women athletes that are out there that are doing really well, and you've got to talk about those other athletes too. And BBC, I think, does a pretty darn good job with it, but they also have their issues, because I heard some BBC producers say, "Oh, we want to make it more like American TV," and I said, "Oh dear God, no! Don't do that, because you're showcasing athletes right now." Do we? And my other beef too is when I hear male announcers call women girls. Can you talk about that a little bit? If you were talking to, right, so here's my next thing. I'm going to put you're in a room with a bunch of TV producers whose job it is to cover track and field. Some of them know the sport. And let's just take for given that they want to do this. They want to get as many people watching the sport as they can. How do they cover women's sports, do it in a respectful way? What are the things they should not be doing?
I think for example, if you listen to commentary over a women's race, number one, girls is used very often, which can be very patronizing. You would never hear the men's 100 meters. You would never hear boys being mentioned in that. So I think number one, language is very important. And I just think if you're going to commentate or showcase women's sport, use the same language that you would for men's sport. We don't need to be different. And number two, I've noticed a lot of the time that commentators will comment on a woman's appearance on the start line. For example, it's very common, and this is especially amongst Black athletes, to comment on, oh, they've changed their hair color. And then also add an opinion on top of that, like, oh, I preferred, the last hair color. There was an example from Ostrava with Sha'Carri, and she had changed her hair from blue to brown. And the commentator felt it necessary to, number one, mention that she had changed, her hair was blue last week, and now she's found he said something along the lines of a much more appropriate hair color, or a much more subdued hair color this weekend. And I personally just felt like that was so inappropriate on so many levels, and was just not relevant to the race. And I don't think that would happen in a male's race. I can't imagine someone saying on a male, oh, he hasn't had a haircut for this race, because no one cares. Like, that's not relevant to what they're about to perform at the highest level, and what color they decide to have their hair at is just not relevant, and also has nothing to do with you. Like, if I want to change my hair color, let me change. Like, it's just not relevant at all. And I think you need to just let people be them. And we need to cut that out particularly. But I think language is very important, and just cutting out the need to comment on a woman's appearance, because it just doesn't happen on the male side of things.
In the U.S., about a week ago, there was a big thing about an American football player, DK Metcalf. So he was challenging some of the American sprinters. And, there was a little trash talking on social media. But, when it came down to racing, he ran, 10:37. Respectable.
Yeah, he ran well.
And Otto gave him some good kudos, and so did some of the others. But I thought he showed class, because he said, these guys are professional. And they asked him, why did you come out here? Because it could take down the respect they have for you in football. And he said, well, I'm an athlete and I compete against professional athletes. I just thought it was very well done. I had one fellow reporter tell me that the guy had saved American track and field for the week. And I had another tell me that they had insulted track and field for the week. And what were your thoughts on it? Did you get to see that race? Did you have any thoughts about that?
Yeah, I was there, actually.
You were in the second heat of the 200,
Yeah, I was at the meet. DK actually trains out of Phoenix, Arizona. So I actually had a background leading up into it. I felt like he did everything very respectfully and very professionally. I personally think that it was good for the sport. It's a shame that it takes a football player competing to bring that extra attention to our sport. And I think that's a problem with us and our sport in itself. We do not make track interesting enough. So I think it was great that he was bringing added attention to the sport. But yeah, in the same breath, a shame that is necessary, seeing as the depth of the fields at that meet was insane. There were a number of world and Olympic champions, and every single field was packed out. So I did feel like it was a shame that all of the attention was on someone external coming in. But again, I think he personally handled himself so professionally, gave credit where credit was due to professional athletes, like he said. And yeah, I can't see that it hindered our sport in any way. It brought in new potential new fans. It definitely added a huge amount of. We need rivalry in our sport. That's what makes it interesting. We need rivalry and we need personalities. And I think he brought that. That race was huge. But like I said, it's a shame that it takes an external person to bring that level of attention to track, because those fields should have brought that level of attention within themselves. Like I said, there were some incredibly talented athletes there all around.
Is there an athlete that you idolize?
Alison has always been someone that I've hugely looked up to. When I was a kid, we've kind of had very similar. She was obviously very successful when she was very young too. So when I was a kid, that's kind of who I had always looked up to. I had the opportunity to meet her when I was super young, and her and her brother have kind of been a part of my journey throughout the whole way. And now with her advocacy work as well surrounding women getting pregnant within sport. I just think she's the way she handles herself and her success in the sport has been phenomenal. And she's a great woman on and off the track. So for sure, Alison.
Is there an athlete that you compete against that you think that we in the media don't give enough attention to? Is there someone who's going to be, wow, you guys, why don't you write about this person? Is there someone that you think of that way?
I think there's so many. Honestly, I think track is one of those sports that focuses on very few athletes and kind of just follows their journeys regardless of what's going on surrounding the sport. I think, and I've never personally competed against her, but I think Shamir Little right now is doing incredible things across a bunch of different events. And I just feel like the media hype around her and what she's doing, they're not equating to the same thing. She's run an incredible 800, an incredible 400 flat, and an incredible 4 hurdles. And like, she's just shown so much depth and perseverance as well. She's had her own battles, and I think, people are definitely underestimating what she's capable of this year. But I would say there's so many athletes like that across the board. Like I said, track is one of those sports that just focuses on very few number of athletes, and then there'll be one breakout athlete every year that suddenly there's a frenzy over. I just feel like there's just not enough media depth around various different athletes who are doing amazing things.
Shamir, and I love Shamir on social media because she really makes you think and kind of just puts it in your face. And I really appreciate someone taking a stand. Okay, so you survived 37 minutes. You're down to your last 3. I think you'll make it now. And thank you again for taking your time after workout. Let's see. Let's talk about Tokyo for just a few minutes.
Yeah, for sure.
What are your thoughts about Tokyo right now? There's more than likely not going to be a crowd. There's probably not going to be anybody in the stands. Do you need you've obviously competed at track meets where there were many people in the stands before. What is the Olympic experience like where if you're going to be going on an airplane, go to your camp, taken on a bus to the stadium, taken back to your place, and then fly home or fly to European meets? How are you viewing this experience?
I'm quite torn about it at the moment, actually. As a whole, I think it's such a difficult time in the world at the moment. And there's obviously a lot of debate, I think, especially within Japan, about whether it should even go ahead. And I have great empathy and sympathy for the people of Japan who do not agree with it going on. I can definitely see their stance and understand why they would be unhappy about that. And as an athlete with a conscience, that is something that I've definitely thought about, and it kind of tears me either way. In terms of a crowd, I think at this point, I respect the fact that we have to just accept that there can't be a crowd if it's not going to be safe. I would never want my presence as an athlete to put people's lives in danger. So if I have to experience the Olympics without a crowd, then that's what I have to do. I feel very fortunate that it's even going ahead at all. Like you said, you know, we're track athletes. It's not a huge sport, so I'm kind of used to competing in front of no one. It's obviously a shame, you know, we breathe for the Olympics, and that experience of competing in front of a huge crowd would obviously have been incredible, and it would have been incredible to experience that with my family as well. But yeah, like I said, at the end of the day, I feel fortunate that it's even being allowed to take place. And I think the experience will be special either way. I think having been at Rio, where there was a very low turnout as well, I think it will be a pretty similar experience to what Rio was. And yeah, I would just like to be conscious of what is going on in the world. And as much as, you know, the US and a lot of Europe is opening up and we're all getting back to normal. So we're kind of feeling like stuff is okay. A lot of the world is still going through a really, really tough time. And I think we need to be conscious of that. So yeah, like I said, I'm feeling fortunate that I even have the opportunity to be able to do this, crowd or no crowd.
And then final question, next year, 2022, we're hoping we'll be back to as normal as it's going to be. But next year you'll have a European Championships, a Commonwealth Games, and a World Championships. Will we see you? Do you want to be in all three?
I am undecided yet. It's a home Commonwealth Games, so I am most definitely going to be there. And for sure, World Champs is also in Oregon, which is obviously right around the corner. So it kind of feels like two home games, honestly, which is amazing. Europeans is probably the one that I'm still umming and ahhing about. You may well just see me there for a day. They're all very close together as well. So yeah, I haven't really thought that far ahead yet. But I would imagine you'll definitely see me at both the Commonwealths and World Champs, and yeah, potentially Europeans as well.
Well, Jodie Williams, thank you so much for today, and really great to talk to you. And I hope to get to see you to meet maybe later this season, definitely next season. But thank you again, and
thank you.
All good things come to an end. So this is Larry Eder with Socialing the Distance, and we had Jodie Williams. She competes for Team GBR, and she is a Puma sponsored athlete. And good luck in Tokyo, and good luck next season too. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much for having me.
Hey, sports fans, Larry Eder, RunBlogRun. We're in Central Point, Oregon this week, and we are doing the epilogue for Socialing the Distance. Today we featured Team GBR athlete Jodie Williams, who's a Puma sponsored athlete. Many track aficionados have known about Jodie since she was about 14 years old. She shook up a lot of the age group times and records in the UK at the 100 and 200. Then she had some injury issues. And with her training mostly focused at 400, even though she, I think using the word detest would make her smile, detested the 400 at the time. She continues to develop at the 200, and at the European Indoors this year, she took the bronze medal in the 400 meters and then came back and medaled in the 4x4 as well. Pretty tough on the boards, knows how to use her elbows, got a kick out of that. But the pandemic has been a challenge for Jodie, as for many athletes. Based in Arizona since about 2015, mostly in the Phoenix area. In the middle of March 2020, was told while working out that the gym would be closed and the track was already closed. She had to head back to the UK, move back in with her mom, which she hadn't done in, it sounded like, several years. She moved out when she was 18, like many of us have, and went back to a coach who had worked with her during her younger career. She returned back to the U.S. this April after garnering a couple medals at the European Indoors, and after her fine performances. Well, she had a great performance in Doha on the 4x4. I believe she's been running 4x4s for Team GBR since 2017. She's told me off the interview that she had wanted to do it beforehand, but there was just a lot of, coming through the system. And Team GBR is a pretty sophisticated 4x1 and 4x400 relay group. What did I like about Jodie? I think she has a great sense of humor. I think she is resilient. She's had some horrific injuries and been able to come back from them. But I also think that she champions the voice of women in the sport. Her programming, she does Coffee Conversation, talks about some of the various challenges for women in the modern world, including in Uganda, where she works with a group of 5 women who focus on challenges for women in Uganda, including what some women call female circumcision, which others call genital mutilation. I listened to the program, watched it last week, and learned a lot. And the thing about Jodie is she knows that much of her audience is male, and she's trying to communicate to them. And I think that takes a real talent. I think she has the ability to do this after she's done with her athletic career, but I think there's a ways to go there. And again, she's developing into a fine 400-meter runner, and one of a wonderful group of Team GBR 4x400 athletes as well. And we'll see her at the next several championships. I did ask her about competing in the Commonwealth, European, and the World Champs next year. And she noted the short period of time that all events are squeezed into. And she knows she believes she'll compete in 2 of them, Commonwealth and the Worlds, and possibly just the relay at Europeans. But she'll have to see. And it's a long-term approach. It's a crazy time right now with the pandemic, where it's squished a lot of the championships into championships every year. I mean, we've got stuff in 2021, 2022, 2023, 2024, 2025, 2026 may be the first year without a championship. And that's really hard on athletes physically, but also emotionally. So we'll have to see how it goes. But Jodie, was a lot of fun. I hope that you enjoy the interview. Some very thoughtful questions and thoughtful answers. This is Larry Eder with RunBlogRun. This is the epilogue of Socialing the Distance. Today we featured Team GBR athlete Jodie Williams, who specializes in the 400 and the 4x4 and still thinks she can run her 200-meter PB, and we hope she can too. If you like RunBlogRun, subscribe to our YouTube channel. If you love RunBlogRun, subscribe to our YouTube channel too if you like it. Like us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. Those eyeballs really help us get a few more bucks from advertising dollars in. Media is a challenge right now. So if you like what we're doing, we've got about 2,500 videos and audios since 2010. And in 2020 alone, Mike managed the production on at least 369 videos, and plus we've got some audios in there too. So something for everybody. But have a great weekend. Watch some track and field, run, jump, or throw. Talk to you soon.